The following account is real. Names have been changed to protect the living and the innocent. This journal contains language and content that may not be suitable for all listeners.
People always compliment me on what an affable and pleasant young man I'm becoming. I've always been good at talking to adults, but then again, it's not that difficult for a smart kid to figure out what they want to hear. I've been skating through life for a while, and I'm getting the feeling that I may have already peaked. In fact, I know I have. In 6th grade, I was awarded Student of the Year and even gave a speech in front of the whole school about my dreams and aspirations. Those were my glory days. Who'd have thought in just a few years I'd all but given up on any dreams of becoming an attorney or doctor after seeing that my SAT score didn't even break 4 figures. I'm literally 3 months away from my senior year and I'm terrified. You see, I'm starting to do something that's a little out of character for me. I'm actually starting to think about my future more than 2 weeks out, and I'm realizing that my apathy for scholastics hasn't done me any favors. All of my smart friends already know where they're going to school and already have the next 30 years of their lives planned out, it seems. I'm starting to worry. I guess if I don't get into a regular college, I can just go to trade school for a year and become a funeral director. I mean, my dad has built something amazing in the funeral homes and crematory. It would be foolish for me not to at least look into becoming a mortician, right? I mean, I can already stomach the gore and crazy schedule, plus we have over $4 million in prearranged funerals written upstairs. So as long as people keep dying, which they will, I will always have a steady income. What other gig has that type of security? Drummer? Hardly. But do I really care about financial security in my future? Not really. I'm spoiled and don't really think I appreciate what it took for my dad to build his businesses up to the point they are now. I'm actually terrified of failing and looking foolish. And I know for a fact that if I took over the funeral homes, I'd be diligent and steadfast in preserving my family's legacy for a while, but let's be honest. I know how I am. I'd be like most other second-generation funeral home owners. I'd lose interest, first letting the grounds go before eventually putting my needs and convenience before the families that I'm serving. And then not long after that, I'll find myself in my 40s, spiraling out of control, insisting that I stay relevant to society by sleeping with girls in their 20s that I meet at the local YMCA. That seems pretty specific, but we all know that guy. Most people I've met that start in the funeral industry as kids end up hating their lives and what they do, if they don't disappear from the scene completely. Well, regardless, I need to start riding the ship now, otherwise I may be drowning by 30. As I write this, I'm really forced to think about what high school and college actually means in the bigger scheme of things. Will getting into a good college and landing a good job making a lot of money slow down death any? Does the Grim Reaper consider gross adjusted income while planning his day of taking lives? No, he doesn't. For the record, I don't think the Grim Reaper is real, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. Regardless of what you do, where you went to school, who you married, and how much money you have in the bank, death is already coming for you. It may be 30 years from now, or it may be in a few seconds. Who knows? Everything we do in life is a distraction from the fact that we all have an invisible ticking clock counting down to 0 inside our bodies. Some of my journal entries are heavy life lessons with some major life-changing events and consequences, while others are treated as origin stories for personal defects, like my inability to contain my cynicism or the crippling fear that I have of unknowingly shitting my pants in public. It's safe to say that this story has a little of both. My name is Grant, and these are my funeral home stories. Chapter 16, Bike Accident by Accident. It's the middle of June, the summer before my senior year of high school. I'm 17 years old and I've spent the morning running errands. Filling up cars with gas, taking them through the car wash, running death certificates from doctors' offices and hospitals to the health department. It's mostly mindless driving and waiting today. Currently, I'm sitting in a hospital cafeteria playing the waiting game with a doctor and death certificate. With a snack, of course. Who just waits in a cafeteria without a snack? What am I, a psychopath? I found out pretty quick that getting your driver's license and being low man at the funeral home means you have to do a fuck ton of gopher work. I haven't seen much blood and guts this summer at all. I have, however, been to the health department, gas station, and car wash a grand total of 4,827 times so far in the first couple weeks back, which I'm fine with. It makes the day go by much faster if I'm not wandering around the funeral home looking for things to do and clean. It might disappoint my friends when I return to school and am only able to tell them how to properly file provisionals and death certificates at a health department, or how to rewire a floor lamp from scratch. But they'll live. It's been uncommonly slow lately, which happens, but it makes for super monotonous, never-ending days. And these droughts have a tendency to make my dad a little antsy. I get it. Our family's business relies on the amount of people dying, and sometimes they just aren't dying. So there isn't a lot my dad can do to ease his nerves. Well, aside from getting exceptionally nitpicky about everything I do at the funeral home. So you can understand why anytime there's an errand to be run, I always volunteer and usually get to go. Honestly, I don't really understand why no one else wants to run errands. Why wouldn't you want a reason to leave the funeral home during the day? It's hard for me to believe that my coworkers would rather sit and do nothing over stretching a couple errands out over most of a morning. Maybe they actually have stuff to do because they're legitimate contributing members of the staff, not just the boss's gopher son. Running errands gets you out of the funeral home, and more importantly, it gets you out from under management's watchful eye. The all-seeing, all-knowing eye of the boss, my father. He runs a real tight ship around here, and he likes things exactly how he likes them. I can't say I blame him. He owns the place. I can tell you one thing he definitely doesn't like, though, for sure. And that's walking into a room and seeing someone he's paying top dollars sitting on their ass. It drives him crazy. When there isn't a service or visitation happening, my dad expects you, as an employee of the funeral home, to always be looking for an opportunity to clean or preserve the funeral home's immaculate legacy and reputation by doing any number of menial tasks. I don't really want to boast, but we're kind of known as the classy, upscale choice of funeral homes in town. We've been open for over 150 years and have 11,000 square feet spread over 4 floors. So there's always something to do or clean to keep this place from falling into disrepair. Maintaining our properties is a full-time job in itself. And now imagine trying to do that full-time job while entertaining 300 dead bodies and all of their friends and family over the course of a year. Someone's always breaking, spilling, or ruining something. So there's always something to do at the funeral home. I've started to get a little more handy because, generally speaking, if there is something to be fixed, we handle it in-house. And by that I mean my dad can do and fix anything. It's incredible. I'm not sure if that's a learned trait or if that was just something he was born with, but I can tell you one thing. I don't take after him when it comes to his handiness or his ability to occupy his time constructively. Believe me. I've been scolded many times by my father for being unable to find enough to do after finishing whatever my primary task for the day was. He can look around any room and instantly find every dusty spot or slightest smudge on a tabletop. That must be another piece of the Inman gene I didn't inherit. But I'm learning. I'm growing. I always find myself very anxious whenever my father's supervising a task I'm performing. He's constantly critiquing or correcting my inability to do a job properly, while he's equally frustrated having raised a son who's inept at doing most tasks to his degree of liking. Over the last couple years, I've learned that on any given day, if I'm doing a job on the opposite side of the building as my father, it's probably best for both of us. So much so, I know what his footsteps sound like when he's on the move, and lately I've been keeping a bottle of Windex and rag on me at all times to give the impression of working hard, even when I'm not. I think part of the reason I like getting out of the funeral home is because I don't have to pretend to be busy. That can really wear you out. If I'm waiting for a death certificate like I am now, I'm out of sight, which means someone else can be bothered to mop the stairwell or dust the casket room. It's been sprinkling on and off the last couple days now, which has kept us all inside from landscaping and mowing. It cleared up overnight though, so we'll probably mow around the parking lots this afternoon. The grass is getting long and I can tell my dad is anxious to have it mowed. By his logic, if our grass isn't cleanly manicured, we might as well be closed for business because no one will go to a funeral home with slightly overgrown grass. It's always something, so I'm in no rush to get back this morning. Which leads me here, to the hospital cafeteria. I'm really making a meal out of my errands this morning, figuratively and literally. And to top it off, I don't think anyone has even realized I'm gone. This is an amazing feeling. It's mid-morning now, and if I do this right, by the time I get back to the funeral home, it'll be time for me to leave for lunch. So I'll be able to go home, see Carter, maybe go for a quick swim, be back by 1, leave at 5, and I'm off tonight. Today is squaring up to be a perfect day of basically not doing anything at the funeral home without Big Brother, or in my case, Big Father, watching over my every move. I'm calling it now. I'm going to get paid to do nothing today at work, and I don't think anyone will be the wiser. Mark my words. Today will be a perfect day of screwing off at the funeral home. Now, I realize what I'm telling you isn't something to be proud of and is a sign of a lazy employee, but we've all done it, so I don't need to explain how good this feels. I'm finding out that life is about enjoying the little things while you can, or at least that's my mantra at the moment while it conveniently lines up with my lifestyle. I'm sure I'll recant that statement and many others when I'm old and riddled with disease, saying something like, I should have been more careful with other people's time, money, and energy. But in this moment, I'm 17 and careless. So fuck it. I mentioned earlier that I'm making a meal out of my morning errands, literally. But it's less of a meal and more of a snack. I've been sitting in the hospital's cafeteria eating a bowl of half chocolate, half tapioca pudding, waiting for a doctor to sign a DC for Mrs. Marshall. That's all we need for cremation. Once it's signed, we file it with the health department and bang boom. We are legally allowed to cremate Mrs. Marshall, which we will be getting around to either later this afternoon or early tomorrow morning. Anyway, back to what's important. I don't know what it is, but lately I've been on a real pudding kick. Chocolate and tapioca mostly. I can take or leave vanilla, but I'm going to say something. And I mean it when I say it. Butterscotch pudding can go fuck itself. Nobody likes butterscotch pudding. I mean, unless you're like 75, which appears to be the average age of everyone in the cafeteria eating around me. So I can totally understand the hospital offering butterscotch as an option. This many sick old folks around me would normally bother me, but this pudding is incredible. Plus, hospital cafeterias make for some epic people watching. It's a tame brunch crowd today, though. It's still a little early for riffraff. Fun fact, hospital cafeterias are awesome. I don't know why more people don't come to the hospital for lunch. The food is great and the price is right. Seriously, why isn't this place packed all the time? Okay, I mean, I know why people don't come here. It's a hospital and people think if they come here, they'll get sick. But I got news for those people. This is my 4th time eating in a hospital cafeteria this week, and I'm totally fine. Other than the fact that I have broader issues that lead me to eat lunch inside a hospital 4 times a week like it's a fucking Steak and Shake. My heavy metal spoon clanks on my pudding bowl. An old woman sitting 3 tables down, hooked up to some machine on a rolling cart, hacks and wheezes while eating pancakes and perusing the paper. You can hear the phlegm in her throaty mouth sounds as she stuffs her syrup-slathered pancakes into her mouth. Ugh. Old people gross me out. I know. It's not really an okay thing to say, but I figure since I'm going to be old and gross one day, maybe, it's fine for me to have an opinion about it now. The sickly pancake lady and I make eye contact. I smile, but quickly look down at my bowl of pudding. I'll be coming to get her in a couple days, I think to myself, shoving a heaping scoop of jiggling tapioca pudding into my mouth. Why did I just think that? Where did that thought come from? Do I actually mean that? Or is that just how you start looking at people once you get a little more jaded in the funeral industry? I don't know, but I'm not sure I like it. I shovel another spoonful of half tapioca, half chocolate pudding into my mouth, and now I'm sneakily staring at the old woman eating her pancakes. She's watching a rerun of Golden Girls on a TV suspended from the ceiling behind me in the corner of the room. She looks so familiar. I swear this is gonna sound weird, but I feel like Lindsay and I picked this woman up last week, but clearly I'm mistaken. Maybe she had a twin, or maybe old people all look alike to me. She looks away from the TV and glances over at me. She sees me staring and gives me a funny look like, "What the fuck are you looking at, buddy?" Embarrassed that I was caught staring, I look down at my cell phone. It's on silent. No missed calls, no new messages. I'm waiting for a call from one of the receptionists at the hospital letting me know that Dr. Kennedy signed Mrs. Marshall's death certificate and it's ready to pick up in the lobby. Dr. Kennedy is a lot faster than most doctors, so it's much simpler just to wait here rather than go back to the funeral home and get called to come back right as you walk in the door. Most of the staff doesn't like waiting at the hospital for health reasons and busy schedules. Shit, Ned is always complaining when he has to wait for DCs. I'll tell you, you're not going to hear me complain about waiting. Though, if you do, it will be muffled through 2 flavors of cafeteria pudding mixing together in my mouth. You'll be happy to know I'm not just gorging myself on pudding while waiting for this DC. I actually have something mildly productive to do. Aside from watching little old Irma gum down one of her last stacks of pancakes. Again, why did I just think that? Anyway, since I knew I was going to be waiting around this morning, I figured I'd take a look at some college applications that have been sitting in the backseat of my car for the past 2 months. I haven't really gotten around to applying anywhere yet. I know what you're probably thinking. Grant, you're 17. It's June going into your senior year of high school and you haven't applied to college yet? Yeah, so, about that. I got a little distracted this year. I started a band and spent most of the school year rehearsing on weeknights and gigging on weekends. I ended up quitting the track team this year too because of an injury, but my coach would probably attribute it to an attitude problem. I mean, he's not wrong. It's just that when I got better at drums, I spent less time running and jumping. Girls like drummers a lot more than they like high jumpers. Believe me, I was well aware of that fact while failing in front of everyone as a high jumper for the last 2 years. Coach recognized my disdain for the track and field life and ultimately told me in his office one day that I was going to have to choose between my band and the track team. He actually said, in 10 or 15 years, which experiences are you going to wish you had? The ones with your track team or the ones with your band? I laughed in his face at the absurdity of his ultimatum. Was he serious? What experiences am I going to wish I had? The ones where I run around in a circle in short shorts? Or the ones where I'm playing drums, high on drugs, in front of loads of people, coincidentally also in short shorts? Who says that to a kid and expects a positive response? I mean, that's bad coaching, right? Why does it have to be all or nothing? If he wouldn't have made me choose right then, I probably would have just continued to do both. But since he had to try and big dick me, I just had to call his bluff. That side story doesn't really explain these blank college applications in front of me, though. Those are just my expert-level procrastination skills at work. It's kind of my thing. Well, it was my thing, until my guidance counselor told me a month ago that if I didn't get my shit together and get on the college track, I might not be going. It was shocking to hear a guidance counselor be so frank with me, but I guess it was something I needed to hear. And clearly it worked. I mean, here I am 4 weeks later, finally cracking open these college apps. Why do I do this to myself? I look down at my phone. Still no missed calls, no new messages. I swallow my last mouthful of mixed pudding and feel myself get really sad as it slides down my throat into my stomach. I have no idea what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. If I don't get into a good school, I'm fucked and I'll never be anything. Or at least that's what I'm told. I look down at one of the college applications. I need to write an essay for this one? I thumb through the rest. I have to write essays for all these? Shit. I thought this was going to be quick and easy. My phone screen lights up. It's the doctor's assistant. She tells me that Dr. Kennedy assigned Mrs. Marshall's DC and it's ready in the lobby. I hang up the phone and stand up, neatening the table and collecting my bowl and silverware on the tan plastic tray with the hospital's insignia in the bottom right corner. When I look down to push in the white plastic chair I was sitting on, I see what looks to be a smushed down dollop of chocolate pudding sitting in the center of the seat. It's basically rubbed into the chair, but still has a shiny, wet appearance. Gross. Kind of looks like poop. It must have just fell from my spoon without me noticing. Just then, it hit me. Because we don't have a service today and I'm just running errands, I'm wearing a blue blazer and tan slacks. We don't have to be as formal on days we don't have services. But that doesn't matter at all right now. Because, let me repeat, I'm wearing tan slacks. And apparently, unbeknownst to me, I've been sitting in chocolate pudding for the last several minutes. Oh no, it's gonna look like I took a big wet shit in my pants. I grab a stack of napkins off the table and wipe up the seat. I lifted my blazer to see the damage to the ass of my pants. It's bad. The chocolate pudding is pressed into the light khaki material exactly where the stain would have been if I would have actually fully relieved myself in my khakis. I frantically try and wipe off the pudding with napkins. It's literally caked into the stitches. Jesus Christ, how much pudding fell off my spoon without me noticing? I just keep throwing brown napkin after brown napkin onto the tray. It literally feels like I'm wiping my ass with my clothes on in public. The woman who was hacking and coughing earlier is now staring at me. Oh, how the tables have turned. I point to my tray, turning 3 different colors of red from embarrassment, and say with a giggle, I guess I must have sat in some pudding, turning around and pulling up my jacket for the woman to see the stain. She shakes her head while cutting her short stack of pancakes. That doesn't look like pudding, sweetie. My face gets hot. I hate this. A kid in my middle school shit his pants one time when we were 14, and now whenever I see him as an adult, that's all I can think about. I can't have anyone see my pants like this. I'm telling you, the wrong person sees this, and then all of a sudden, my new nickname is Poopy Pants Grant for the next 10 or 15 years. I can't have that. I just need to get that DC and get out of here. I'll just change my pants at lunch. No big deal. One of my college applications has some chocolate pudding smeared all over the SAT, ACT portion of the application. I suppose it's ruined now. You can't send a college application with chocolate pudding smeared all over it and expect to get in. I take a closer look and think to myself, well, looks like we're not going to, San Diego State. I throw the soiled application on top of my dishes and napkins. I smile at the old lady as I scurry out of the cafeteria, loading the tray on the cafeteria's conveyor belt. The hospital's quiet today, so no one was able to see my pudding-stained khakis picking up Mrs. Marshall's death certificate in the main lobby. I feel relieved. In the car driving back to the funeral home, I pull my phone out of my blazer pocket and see 5 missed calls, all from my dad. Shit, I always forget to turn my phone off as silent. He's gonna be annoyed that he had to call me so many times. I press resend to call him back. It rings. My dad answers with a fairly traditional greeting. Where the hell are you? My phone was on silent. I'm at the hospital. I just picked up the Marshall DC. You've been gone for 2.5 hours with the van. We got a call and we need you back here. Swing by the funeral home and pick up Josh. He's got all the details. Okay, Dad, I'm on my way. And Dad, do you have any extra pants I could change into? I got chocolate pudding all over the pair I have on. There's a moment of silence before he responds. No. He hangs up. He seemed annoyed. "10 minutes later. Josh and I are on our way to the call now. Not sure where we're going, just know it's a police call. I'm not privy to any other information right now. Josh is a new director, probably in his 30s, and he's not much to write home about. He's about 6 feet tall, skinny, pale, and wormy. Not just in appearance, but also in character. He's obsessed with his mediocre golf game and anime. 2 things I have little patience for. I feel that all of his attempts to appear worldly and eccentric just kind of make him seem like the opposite. We have nothing in common, and I bet with fairly high certainty that he'll end up quitting before the end of the year. Being around the funeral home my whole life, I can tell who's got legs for the business and who just sees their current employment at the funeral home as a stepping stone to some other career path. We hire 2 or 3 new people every year that don't make it past 6 months, but I guess that's the business. So, with all that considered, we've spent more than enough time on Josh. He's driving, I'm in the passenger seat. We swapped when I picked him up. 1, because he knew where he was going. And 2, I had to run inside to pee, but also use the bathroom's mirror to see how bad the damage to my pants is. It's bad. But thankfully my blazer covers most of the giant chocolate pudding stain while I'm standing. So I should be good, and no one will see the evidence of my embarrassing carelessness before I get home to change my pants this afternoon. Riding in the front passenger seat with the windows closed and the air on, I'm starting to notice the scent of chocolate in the air. And I'm not the only one. Josh looks at me and says, "Hey, do you smell that? Is that chocolate?" I stop him, feeling my face grow warm like it did in the cafeteria with the old woman. I tell Josh, "Yeah, that's me. I sat in some chocolate pudding earlier, and now the aroma's just following me around everywhere." Josh smiles and says, "Oh yeah? Are you sure it's chocolate pudding?" Before I can respond to Josh's 3rd-grade attempt at humor with a comment that will no doubt cut him to his core, we both see police cars blocking the road about a half-mile up the street. "This must be us," I say, pointing out the windshield. "Yep, should be about 2 blocks past the roadblock," Josh says. Our bodies laid out at the intersection of Johnson and Hines. It's a car versus bike call. Car versus bike, huh? I've been promised this before, pulling up to a crime scene only to see someone stabbed beyond the point of recognition. So I'm reluctant to get my hopes up. I've always wanted to see a bike accident in person, but just haven't yet. I know. I have a weird bucket list of things I want to see, but can you blame me? If you had this job, you'd want to see something more interesting than just at-home bed deaths and heart attacks. Maybe not at first, but definitely over time. Josh pulls up to an officer in his car parked in the street. He waves us through to go past his car and down toward the scene. We're now driving trafficless down Johnson Street. I have a flashback to last summer and the worst call I've been on so far. This is kind of how that call started too. Honestly, I don't know what to be more nervous about. Someone seeing my pudding-stained pants, or that this call could potentially ruin my summer, just like the toll road accident did last year. I don't think I need another one of those for a while. The only thing I see as we approach are 2 police cars, caution tape, a maroon Suburban, debris in the road, and as you would expect, a stark white sheet with a body laying under it, laying close to the center of the intersection. Josh stops the car and parks the van next to one of the police cars. We get out and unload the cot. The county sheriff, a lumpy white guy with a high and tight haircut, walks over and tells us what's going on. Hey guys, wow, you made it quick. This should be a pretty easy one for you today. We got 1 body, male, 49, name Peter Little. That's all the information we were able to get off his person. Apparently, Mr. Little was making a quick trip to his friend's house to pick up a screwdriver or drill bit or something like that. He was cruising through a stop sign, making a left-hand turn on Johnson off of Hines when the driver of the Suburban, an 18-year-old girl who had the right-of-way, hit him broadside, killing him instantly. The officer, Josh, and I walk the stretcher past the caution tape barrier. I see Mr. Little under the sheet. Do you think Mr. Little's wife knows he's dead and never coming home yet? And is his friend still waiting for his pal Peter to stop by, or do you think he figured something went horribly wrong? I look past the body under the sheet and pooling puddles of blood at my feet and see the rear end of the Suburban that killed Mr. Little. The back windows read, "Congratulations," written in temporary glass paint. Oh my god, the girl who killed this guy just graduated high school? Could you imagine that? While all your friends are planning and prepping for their graduation parties and college careers, you'd be in a police station explaining away 2 seconds of your life that are going to hang over your head forever. I can't even imagine. 2 months to college and you've already killed someone. I mean, even if it's not your fault, I still think you'd feel awful about ending someone's life unintentionally, right? I see what was once a shiny red Specialized bicycle laying on the ground a few feet away from Mr. Little's body. I think the frame is made out of steel, and to say that this bike is an unrideable mess is the understatement of the century. The center post and crotch bar have been snapped apart at the welds. The wheels are popped and bent to shit with spokes jutting in every direction. The sound Mr. Little's body and bike made slamming into the Suburban must have been audible for at least a mile. Josh and I put on our gloves. We're not wasting much time here. Generally on calls where streets are closed, funeral home employees are encouraged to do their job quickly to get the roadway cleaned and open to traffic without too much further interruption. Josh and I position and drop the cot next to where Mr. Little is laying on the road underneath the sheet. Having learned from my past mistakes, I decide to bend down to the head end of Mr. Little's body and lift up the sheet, revealing his upper torso. He's laying on his back, one eye open, the other partially closed. His face is totally fucked and bloody. I'm not a doctor or crime scene investigator, but I would assume with great certainty that severe head trauma was this man's cause of death. His orbital sockets, nose, cheekbones, and brow line look like they're all completely caved in. I imagine what it's like dying from a face-first impact. I get chills when I realize Mr. Little may have had his eyes open right before his face smashed into the grill of the car or cement. I'm at a bad angle to see the front of the Suburban, but I'm assuming its grill shares a similar fate as Mr. Little's. Looking over his torso, I can see several deep lacerations and a bone sticking out of one of his arms just before the elbow. The shirt Mr. Little is wearing was practically ripped clean off his body, but I can still see that it says Columbia Alumni Association. Wow, Columbia alum and a Specialized bike. This guy did pretty well for himself, until about an hour ago. I wonder what he did for a living. My stomach sinks into my body while I think about all the blank college applications and the subsequent essays I haven't written yet. There's no way I'm getting into college at this point. I'm fucked. I'm just bound to be one of those funeral director townie types, I guess. Breathe. Breathe, Grant. You're fine. I take one last look at Mr. Little's destroyed face, and a feeling of calm and peace rushes through my body with a thought. You know, this guy went to Columbia. How well did that shake out for him? Sure, he was probably successful and married, but what did that get him? I guess going to college doesn't mean anything if you're not a smart person. After all, this guy couldn't even look both ways. You know, not only did Mr. Little make a piss-poor life decision by ignoring cycling safety protocol, by not wearing a helmet and ignoring stop signs, he also may have very well ruined this 18-year-old girl's life, at least for a little while. No hot shower and good night's sleep can wash away accidentally killing someone. I think that's true. I guess it all depends on the shower head and bedding, but I couldn't imagine killing someone right before I move off to college. But what do I know? I'm not even sure I can imagine myself going to college at this point. I put the sheet back down, covering up Mr. Little's torso. It lands in a puddle of his blood and absorbs into the fabric like I've always seen on paper towel and MaxiPad commercials on TV. Except in this case, it's a sheet instead of a MaxiPad, and instead of blue liquid, it's blood. All right, you ready? I say to Josh and the officer. I'm anxious to get this show on the road. I'm starting to get hungry, plus I really need to crack down on some college applications, I guess. The immediacy of today has gotten to me. To think just about an hour ago, I thought I wasn't going to have to do any real work today and slipped by completely unnoticed. But clearly I forgot where I work. Trying to predict a day's work at the funeral home is like trying to catch water in a net. It's impossible. Josh and I have Mr. Little wrapped in our own cover sheet and are now bent over, ready to move the body onto the stretcher. I feel the officer's hand touch my shoulder and his voice says, "Hey man, you feeling all right? I can help if you need." I turn around and say, "I feel fine. Why are you asking?" The officer points behind me. I look down as I'm leaning over Mr. Little's body and see that my blazer isn't covering up the large pudding stain on the ass of my pants like I thought it would. Oh, yeah, haha. Embarrassed, I feel my body temperature increase. It's pudding. I sat in some pudding this morning at the hospital. I turn back to the body, feeling confident that I've given a sufficient excuse for what looks like a large poop stain on my slacks. As we lift Mr. Little's body, I hear the officer say, "It sure doesn't look like pudding." Annoyed and embarrassed by that comment for a third time today, I exhale loudly and we place Mr. Little on the stretcher. It's 3:45, and it might surprise you, but I'm back in the hospital cafeteria. Why, you're probably asking? Well, it turns out that someone may have gotten chocolate pudding on the Marshall DC in the hustle and bustle of the day. And even though our county health department is forgiving with typos and wear and tear on documents, they can't really look past a glob of chocolate pudding on a document when notarizing and filing it. Hey listen, I don't want to point any fingers here, but somebody really screwed the pooch on this one. Anyway, since I found myself back here, I decided to take advantage of my time and have a small cup of pudding, and at least fill out one college application. They were all out of chocolate, tapioca, and vanilla, so I decided to give butterscotch another shot. And you know what? It's not that bad. I put my pen down on the application. First name, Grant. Middle initial, W. Last name, Inman. I pull my hand up after finishing my last name, feeling good that I'm on my way. College, here we come. I glance further down the page and see a large tan smudge. Fuck. Apparently I had butterscotch pudding on my hand and didn't realize it. Annoyed, I throw the soiled application on the hospital tray with the bowl of pudding and walk it over to the conveyor trash belt. This is the third document I've ruined with pudding today, not to mention the pair of pants I'm still wearing. I want to scream right now. What the fuck am I going to do? Breathe, Grant. You're fine. Everything's gonna be okay. I pull my phone out of my pocket and see 4 missed calls from my dad. Fuck. It's always something. My name is Grant, and these are my funeral home stories. If you enjoy this podcast, please rate and review wherever you listen, and don't forget to tell a friend. It really, really helps. Thanks for listening.